That was the theme song, well, kind of Skippy the Bush Kangaroo. If you're too old and just about remember it, well then, you're in the right place. If you're too young and you haven't got a clue, don't worry about it. But basically, it's about a bush kangaroo. Kangaroo that befriended a young boy and all the adventures that went with it. But kangaroos can actually help us with the coronavirus Covid-19. So let's have a crack and figure out how this is so. So it's Skippy we look at first. And of course, it's not just specifically Skippy, try to say that 10 times and really fast, but it's the talk now of animals that are actually marsupials. These guys are the ones that have been now proven. Science says, new science is saying that these guys can communicate better than we actually ever thought this was possible in the first place. Animals, it says, quote unquote, have never been domesticated, such as kangaroos or these types of animals, that is, can intentionally now communicate with humans, which is challenging the notion that this behaviour is usually restricted to domesticated animals like dogs, horses or goats. How many goats have you got in your house? I mean, really? And I mean, the old song says, leave the horse outside. And it's the first of its kind study from the University of Roehampton and the University of Sydney has found this. Of course, Sydney and these places are in Australia, where the kangaroo is. So what they found was 10 out of the 11 kangaroos tested. That's quite a lot. That's a huge percentage. Over 90% actively looked at the person that had put the foot in a box. And this is the type of experiment is known as the unsolvable problem task. Well, it was solved, wasn't it? 9 of the 11 kangaroos additionally showed gaze alterations between the box and the present person. And this was a heightened form of awareness of knowing, of course, that there's somebody there that they needed or wanted to communicate with. So if we think of kangaroos, of course, they've got these back legs and there's 4 legs, 4 arms. They're going to be not as able to actually, use them, are they? Because they need them for balance. So to communicate like we do as human beings with our hands all over the place, as I do anyway, for sure. Hi-ya! And there's going to be that kind of a difference, isn't there? So their gaze then is going to be really, really, really important. And this is what they're beginning to see. Pardon the pun, see and view and gazing, and how the actual, I suppose, flirtation is going on with the kangaroo and the human being. Now, Dr. Alan McElligott said, quote unquote, through this particular study, we were able to see that communication between animals can be learnt. Now, that's really important. And that the behaviour of gazing at humans to access food is not related to domestication. Really interesting. Indeed, kangaroos showed a very similar pattern of behaviour we have seen in dogs, horses and even goats when put to the same test. Now I have my hand up, and first I want a pet kangaroo. He said, quote unquote, our research shows that the potential for referential intentional communication towards humans by animals has been underestimated, sure has, which signals an exciting development in this area. Kangaroos are the first marsupials to be studied in this manner. This is actually really cool, and the positive results should lead to more cognitive research beyond the usual domestic species. So think of it, we could have all of these guys in our homes, in our houses sooner than later. The actual need for it is different than the want, and of course through human affection we just want things. We just say, hey, isn't that a cute kangaroo, hey, isn't that a cute koala bear or whatever, and people then want them in their homes. Why? Because they feel there's a communication that I know, and now science is telling me that I can actually communicate. Look at Tiger King, look at exactly what happened there. And we see Netflix exploded onto the screens in 2020, early 2020, and showed us all this in the lockdown, where Tiger King and having wild animals caged, there could be an infection, and how people visited those places, those zoos and those places where the animals are there. And it was just incredible how we all in the world amazed at how this particular guy just lived his life with these particular animals around him. So now that we know more, we could possibly bring in more animals into our homes. But of course, then we're talking about the origins of the virus in the first place, the coronavirus. Did it not just come from animals and mixing with animals and all of that? Well, first of all, it's all to do with the coronavirus and the COVID-19 restrictions and the best practice. And of course, what we learned in early 2020, just as soon as this came along down the tracks, COVID-19 was bang smack out there. We figured out that social distancing and other measures were really, really important. And we really need to understand these before we can skip towards the kangaroo, pardon the pun. But to stop the spread of the coronavirus, COVID-19, it said that you should avoid close contact with anyone that you do not live with. And this is called, of course, social distancing. In fact, it became very well known, such well known, that at the end of the year it was in some dictionaries for the first time ever, believe it or not. Now, the national lockdown, this was the national health system in UK, and of course I'm looking at the UK with regard to this because it's really important with the strain of a newer strain that came of COVID-19 in early 2021. So what they said then was to help stop the spread of coronavirus, the government is advising everyone to stay at home. Stay at home. And we did. We sure did. Now, the advice was to avoid spreading, and spreading, of course, caused infection. Now, the other thing was stay 2 meters or 3 steps away. Of course, there was this whole thing of washing hands, which we have to do, to use sanitizer gel and mouth and nose coverings and masks and so on. But the debate around the actual social distancing initially, and the information came, believe it or not, initially from the likes of the Spanish flu. Back in the times of the Spanish flu, there was this insistence that people need to stay away from each other because, again, like flus, the coronavirus or COVID-19 spreads through the respiratory system, through breathing. So this thing of 2 meters, this new measurement, of course, of meters as opposed to yards and feet, meant that people had to be essentially, in old money, 6 feet, 6 inches and a bit away from each other. Now, I saw, and probably saw, plenty of information out there, plenty of posters, ironic posters saying 2 meters, and then they'd have this like 6 feet underneath, which was crazy because there's quite a distance of 6 inches or so between 2 meters and 6 feet. So it's quite a bit. It's half a foot. And if we're sneezing or if we're breathing in that sneeze, that's a huge difference to us. All we need to do is look outside when it's frosty, and especially in the darkness, we can see where our breath goes, and the 6 inches is massive, how the breath dispels along the way. So then how the heck can kangaroos, and knowing this about kangaroos, actually benefit us and help us with the COVID-19 crisis and the coronavirus as such? Well, let's look at the facts about kangaroos. They're marsupials, right? Fine. And they're mammals. They have a life expectancy of up to 23 years of age. Not bad. We know they have a big leap, which is fantastic. And 23 is the number of Michael Jordan, so maybe they'll be able to play basketball as well when they become domesticated. No, that is not the reason why we're talking about that. And it's not also about their weight and the fact that they're long and nimble at 90 kilograms. But it's actually their body size. They're 2 meters or over 2 meters in height, which begs the question. It goes back to this whole thing of the social distancing. If we can have a pet kangaroo, surely we can just let him lie down in front of us while we talk to friends. In fact, even if we go into friends' houses, we can bring him in. Why? Because he's going to be domesticated anyway. He can communicate with us. If this is what's going on in the new science, and if we can figure out how to actually become friends with kangaroos, well, then maybe we can actually bring them in and actually help us to be away from people whilst also communicating with others. After all, our friend the kangaroo, he's going to communicate too. So there you go. Maybe that's how kangaroos can help us in the future with COVID-19. Anyway, until next time, please subscribe, like the video, and keep hopping, keep going, keep well, and have a wonderful day. It's the first one.